Start recording in 3, 2, 1. Hey guys, finishing up the season here. And so we're going to take a look at where things went with regards to the win rate. Recovered pretty well from that really rough start. The tilt was pretty bad, and you've all kind of seen where that's gone and how the recovery's gone. Well, we're going to look at where things have settled, and it's actually some really interesting results, and it's going to lead into our second before and after. So this is going to be really surprising to anyone who's been keeping track of my Swarmhost play since beta. So we'll look here, Protoss 50%, tied with Terran 50%, and Zerg 54%, a little bit down. But that's way up from the little over 30% we were at the, when was that? I guess that was about a month ago. Something to that effect. I don't recall. My memory's bad. Okay, so a few things we can take from this. First off, before and after one huge success. My ZVT has not been at 50% in ages. Not since beta, early beta no less. And here's the beauty of that. That's 100% Swarmhost play. It's finally starting to click. It's taken a complete reshaping of how I think about adequate spores and spines and adequate number of queens and expansion and upgrade timing, but it's finally passing the 50% mark. So I'm thrilled about that. But then we also have Protoss, which is effectively tied for last place. And that's a little bizarre considering we came from a place of, what, 83, 84% at one point late in the beta. And even for much of the first season, it was above 70%. So that's where our before and after is going to be today. Yesterday I had an interesting kind of realization about how I as a player develop my strategies and grow, but at the same time it's kind of one of those where I take 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, and sometimes I take 2 steps forward and 3 steps back, and we're going to figure out why that occurs. And some very quick changes that I made over the last 2 days that had a huge turnaround, because actually my ZVP was below 50% just last night. So, interesting enough. Alright, so I'm going to turn the overlay back on now that we're done looking at these win rates. By the way, big thanks to, I always pronounce it wrong, Existor, for the overlay. Actually, he customized it for me. So you can see there's a little bit of customization there. He added my name to it, so that is pretty cool. I'm really appreciative of that. Finishing out rank 3 in my division, not too terribly bad, not as great as I'd like given that I'm 51%, but nevertheless, we're going to figure out why that changed, because my ZVP has been carrying me for the last 6 months, and it stopped this season, and we're going to see why. Okay, so I actually have 3 games this time, and I'm going to respond to some feedback I got from before and after 1, which was, you don't really need to show the whole game. In fact, you can probably cruise through a large majority of it. So I'm going to do this a little more like day 9, where we'll cruise through much of the early game. You all pretty much know what you're going to be looking at, and we'll start to talk about kind of what the theme is of this cast. I am the pink Zerg player in the top right, because why not have manly Swarmhosts? My opponent is the red Protoss FLC Quicks in the lower right. And actually, this is a practice game. He's a really good Protoss player, and we met back up and started practicing yesterday, and we played a series of games actually on the new map, so that was pretty cool. He gave me permission to cast this, so I was super pumped for that. Alright, so we're actually going to look at the unit count today for all 3 games, because it says a lot. Now, nothing too crazy going on here. We're going to make some drones and some extractors. And we're going to go really, really fast, and hopefully this isn't lagging on the stream and YouTube video too terribly badly, but I'd like to get through this as quickly as possible. Okay, so this is something I've been working on more and more, and I actually haven't done a cast of any of these because, I don't know what the best way to put it is. It's not the most interesting way to open, because 2-base muta, it's not like it's reinventing the wheel or anything. But it's 2-base muta into Swarmhost, so that's kind of fun, and sometimes that ends up with some really interesting multi-prong. However, more often than not, just it forces more Phoenix than a Protoss opponent would necessarily like to commit to. And that's all well and good, but we're not actually looking at the 2-base Muta here. That was more just me experimenting with the map and trying to uncover how the best way to approach this map is. And I think actually 2-base Muta is fine into Swarm Host, possibly even Swarm Host Queen Push if they're vertical or horizontal, but I'll probably need some Mutas, possibly even Muta Speedling for cross map on this because it's just so huge. Gotta establish map control. Okay, so what we're actually going to be looking at here is, first off, look at how late this is. Now, granted, we did open some Mutas, so I'd say, you know, we can afford to be maybe 2 minutes later on our Swarm Host. But if you look at this, we're now at 12 minutes, and our Infestation Pit is finally finished. If we compare just ballpark with some of the Swarm Host pushes I was doing back in beta, I mean, we were hitting 8 Swarm Hosts by 10 minutes. And they were at their doorstep. So this is a huge deviation. And trust me, there's a point to all this. I'm going to get to it here in a moment. But let's watch how this unfolds. I'm actually going to speed this up a little bit. So I move across. He snipes a 1 Swarm Host. Nothing too special. This all plays out pretty standard for going Muta into Swarm Host. That's all well and good. Got a few queens. That's pretty awesome. And now we're going to go ahead and start actually getting into range and doing some damage. We're 15 minutes into the game with 10 Swarm Hosts. And if you would have asked me 4 months ago, hey, can you push out at 15 minutes with 10 Swarm Hosts? I would have said, hell no. What's wrong with you? That's not critical mass. 16 or more. Optimally, you want around 24. So what changed? And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about here, is I've kind of realized that as a player, I'm too flexible, too malleable. I don't know what the right word's going to be there, but I adjust my play on a game-by-game basis. I actually watched how my play evolved through a tilt and through kind of a rally, and I just kept playing because I had worked out, damn it, I got all my exercise in, I'm going to play, and that's final. But I kept an eye on how my timings changed, how my approach to the game in general changed throughout the day, while trying to execute this before and after. And this was yesterday. This was last night, one of my final games of the day. So what I realized was my play changes so quickly I don't really adequately determine if something was a positive or negative change, which is part of why this before and after started. To help me solidify changes. And lo and behold, my ZVT improves by 14% in 1 season. I say that's a success, so I'm going to keep doing it. But what this is me taking ZVP and saying, oh, well, it's my best matchup. Not only is it my best matchup, but it's just straight up easy on certain maps. And so let's just keep trying things. And once in a while I might lose to something, so I'll have a knee-jerk reaction that says, oh, I lost to that, therefore, from this point forward, I'm going to fix it by doing X, Y, and Z. And sometimes X, Y, and Z might mean, oh, I'll make some Hydras before I move out. Or it might mean, I'll make 3 Spines before my layer finishes, because I hate losing to those Zealot timings. So that's all well and good if I make one change. I give it 10 to 20 games of testing. And then I can say, it's good, or no, it needs a little more tweaking. Maybe 3 Spines is too many. Maybe 2 Spines and 1 more Queen is good, so that I have a little more mobility when I move out. Who knows? But instead, I make that change, and then I go into the next game, and I go, okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and change something else. And so I'm continuously building on variables that I have yet to test. And what has resulted is me taking very solid Swarm Host base play that was completely my own, completely unique, and bastardizing it into 11 Swarm Hosts, 7 Corruptors, 5 Mutas, 4 Vipers, 15 Queens, 8 Hydras. I mean, it's always really cool when you see a little bit of everything and the kitchen sink thrown into a game, but this is not conceptually a sound way to play. Especially when I have always kind of felt that Swarm Hosts, by necessity, need to hit a critical mass of 16 to 24. Also, my strength tends to be the multitasking when I'm able to start splitting 24 Swarm Hosts into 3 to 4 groups, or at least 2, and start doing some guaranteed damage as a result. So let's go ahead and watch this play out. This is a pretty cool game nonetheless. And I will still go Muta into Corruptor Swarmhost into something like this, but it's not going to be with a top count of 16 Swarmhosts. That's just pitiful. I finally hit my critical mass at 20 minutes, 21 minutes, almost. And that's just, I could have knocked out so much by now. I could have had it pinned for the last 5 minutes at least, if I would have prioritized my Swarmhost production. So, we're going to look at the next game, which was the, well, honestly, the knee-jerk reaction. I realized that I had diluted my Swarmhost play, and not stayed true to what was working. And so last night I spent some time hammering out the old build order, the one that got me where I was 2 months ago. And made a few little changes, but by and large it was the old one where I grabbed 2 Evo chambers, get layer. By about 12 and a half minutes, I'm moving across the map with about 6 queens, 8 queens, and 8 to 10 Swarmhosts. And that's pretty cool. It's not quite the cheesy all-in version that I was using for a little while there on like Daybreak. It's the slightly safer version that seemed like it was more stable. And I practiced that really, really hard. But part of my approach was, okay, I'm going to make sure the Swarmhosts are as good as possible. So I'm going to do this little double Evo chamber when my layer's finishing. And I'm going to go ahead and get quicker upgrades. And so, we're going to go ahead and let this play out, because this is a pretty interesting game, just dodging around. Oh, that's too fast. That's not enough for us to actually see what's going on. So I'm over here sniping some buildings. I pull back. We get a pretty cool engagement here. I'm sorry I'm not fully casting this game. This is an amazing game, but I'm not going to be able to squeeze in everything I wanted to talk about if I fully casted this game. So I'm getting some really good engagements here, pushing him back, and I'm able to finally go on the true offensive here. At about 26 minutes, I'm able to finally start getting something really done, but I'm still only at 17 Swarmhosts. I wonder if I even really necessarily want to play these out, but I think, especially, to give Quicks the credit, I really want to play this one out, because he played extremely well. Alright, so I get in, I take out the natural, cuts off some gas mining, so that is pretty cool. And we'll go ahead and 2-speed for the remainder of this here. And now notice how Hydra heavy I am also. So that's another thing, is I always was operating under the assumption of Hydras aren't really going to be my go-to anti-air. Ooh, I hope I didn't just lose my stream. Okay. I'll cross my fingers that I didn't just lose my stream, but usually when my taskbar shows up, that means the stream disconnected for a second. Okay, well, hopefully everyone's still there. Hopefully this recording's all in one piece. Otherwise, I'll have to do two parts. But yeah, queens are my desired anti-air, Queen Viper, and a few Hydras to supplement. But I've also become very dependent on Hydras because they're easy to make. That's the only reason. They're not superior to queens in any way. This was one thing that I've liked. Just a few Broodlords really help. They occupy the Colossi. They keep Blink Stalkers at bay from blinking up onto your Swarmhost, and that's pretty cool. But, take it or leave it when there's already Tempest out. I'm not entirely sure on that. Okay, so we'll go ahead and finish this up here. Cruising along. And we're just about done. I promise this is the longest game. I believe it's the longest game. I'm not sure. Okay. And suffice to say, from about this point forward, I miss a few abducts there. Doesn't go too terribly smoothly. And we are done. We're just going to go ahead and quit out, because Quicks at this point just goes ahead and Colossus rolls me. Okay, so, one down, and that finishes up, and I look at the replay, and I say, okay, what can I do better? And I realize how diluted my army was in terms of any kind of focus. There's a little bit of everything, which is kind of fun, but not what I'm shooting for. Not what I've proven to be successful. So, this game was this morning, after I had tested my old build, and I felt I had improved it a bit, okay? So, at this point, I went ahead, and consider this the first after. This is actually like a before and after. Because the goal here is for me to find something that I know works, and that I will stick with long enough to confirm that it works and sticks, and that it can work within metagame changes. I can just slightly tweak it. Just like what is occurring with my ZVT, I can slightly tweak that. If I start seeing more siege tanks, then maybe I'll be a little bit less on the roaches and spines and a little bit more on the speedlings, or maybe I will grab just a few mutas to help keep that at bay if they're skipping siege tanks and going into rather than going into mines. Or I should say if they're skipping mines and going into siege tanks. There we go. So this was this morning, and this was after I had a chance to test out the okay, we're shooting for 12 minutes, maybe a 15 or so minute max. Really fast upgrades, probably the quickest upgrades I've ever had. And as I was practicing it, I felt that was a very tangible improvement to the build over what I had been doing 3 months ago. So I said, let's go with this. This sounds great. So my gas timings are about what they used to be when I was doing a slightly later gas. Maybe a little quicker so that I'm able to get those upgrades started sooner. But so far, nothing's changed too terribly much. I saw that I had a mothership core moving across, so I went ahead and got those spines, and I'm actually going to switch over to my view here. So we're scouting, we see, okay, he's double upgrading. More than likely we're going to a long game, but we're not quite going to take our expansion yet. Okay, so there's those double upgrades. And we look at my resources, and I'm still going to have enough gas for some swarm hosts. That's pretty good. Going to be down by 2.5 swarm hosts. Not too terribly bad. Really cranking out those queens, though. And I haven't really seen too terribly much to make it necessary. I mean, I have seen one Stargate, but if we look at what's being produced here, well, a Phoenix. And I could have inferred that by the Double Forge. Double Forge being chrono boosted, I can guarantee you that Stargate is not getting much love. So we're pumping out all these queens, and let's look at the moment that these swarm hosts move across the map and start doing some damage, because that's really what's important here. Because that was the foundation of the swarm host play that was always working so well for me. Oh, I lied, this one's pretty long. But we won't watch all of this one. It's another good game, but you'll get the point here soon. Okay, so now I'm here, I'm being really cautious, and I'm throwing them across the map, but really, at this point, well, I was holding back some warp prisms, but by the time that I had already shooted it away once, I'm going to have enough spine crawlers probably to hold. So I really right now need to be, Overlord, swarm hosts right around here, split up. And rather than 11, I need to be around 20, based on the practice games I had. And so if we look up the unit count, we're on 8 queens, 9 roaches, which were completely out of left field. I don't want to be going roaches this early. Great upgrades, 2-2. That's pretty awesome, but given that my opponent's double forge, I'm actually just basically matching him. But still, we're not quite where we are, because I tried to improve on what was already kind of my proven build. I said, well, let's go ahead and get those crazy fast upgrades. See, I'm already starting 3-3 at 1450. But then what does that do? Well, that means I don't establish tempo until, well, there's no room to even take the tempo. This isn't really even going to get much done because there's just so few swarm hosts here. So I finally make contact with his army at 16 minutes. And what does he have in play? 3 Colossus already in play when my 11 swarm hosts finally make contact with his army. What am I going to get done with that? Nothing. I mean, the reason my ZVP was so successful once upon a time is because I would catch him when he was at most on 1 Colossus, and he had to throw away countless zealots or buildings or whatever just to even buy time to get to a healthy Colossus count. But this, this is, if anything, a perfect example. This is actually pretty cool. They're all red but green. Oh well. This is actually a perfect example of kind of what I see a lot of other people when I watch streams do when they play their swarm hosts. Is they'll, oh, well, I guess I'll make a few more. I'm just going to hang back, see if maybe they wander into my locus. Okay, it's about 16 minutes. Let's see if I can do some damage. Oh, he's got a lot of Colossus already. Okay, I guess swarm hosts just suck. So all of that was because of a few factors here. First off, the quick evo chambers. Okay, that's something I can easily fix. I'm just going to delay that a bit. The other was 3 spines and a spore up here, which also was one of those knee-jerk reactions I made a few months back when everyone and their dog was hitting a goofy little 5-gate timing or a 5-gate void ray timing or something up your natural because they just didn't want to play into the long game. But I could have easily just taken one quick look at the double forge at the front of his base and known, even if I didn't see the Stargate, that there was nothing coming my way for a very long time. So, again, just applying a standard that I didn't yet have any reactionary, there was no rationale for it. It was, well, I'm just going to always make that because people apparently like to throw zealots at my natural. So I combined those two factors to have a relatively slow push because I wanted to wait for my queen count because I had seen a Stargate. So I just assumed that must mean he's got some Void Rays or 8 Phoenix waiting to pick up my Swarm Host. Definitely didn't take into consideration the double forge. All of this is just from operating off of all those little knee-jerk reactions. So I took the build, and this is where we'll get to the after. Give you a spoiler, that one I lost after he dodged Locust Spawn after Locust Spawn and had so many Colossus I couldn't possibly do anything about it because I never established tempo. So, after a lot of frustration and a lot of tilting today, I said, I'm going to go to the most basic version of this build when I just absolutely was having no problems. I'm not going to improve it. I'm not going to do anything to it except for just play it. And it was when I was going up to 3 to 4 queens, depending on what I saw, and then grabbing 2 gases, or sometimes grabbing 1 gas and then grabbing 3 more. Again, depending on what I saw. But the important thing is just get to lair, get those 8 swarm hosts, get some queens, push across the map, take your third, and contain and maintain tempo. And this actually occurred just in the middle of my stream today. It wasn't a case of me sitting down and studying replays and going, what should I do? It was, again, another case of, as I continue to play, my gameplay changes 1 win or 1 loss to the next. And that's why I'm doing this before and after now, because I want to make sure that this is what sticks. Because this game, give or take, occurred 3 CVPs in a row after I made the change. So, something must be right here. And I think, just going back to basics is really the key. So this was in response to seeing Gateway first, and I had gotten in, got a pylon, so that was great. Felt like I wanted to push it, so I went for some probes, didn't get any probes, lost all my Zerglings. Means I'm pretty much obligated to go ahead and respond with some spines. Now I did overreact here a bit with extra Zerglings. Really thought he was pushing out, so I should be up to around 47, 48 drones rather than 43. And he recognizes that, and this is actually really smart on his part. Since I don't have Metabolic, I can't really do anything about that. So my opponent takes a super fast third. And I felt like this was a great example of how important it is that I go back to those basics. Because this is a situation that the build we just previously looked at would not have been able to beat. Now, these spines went up before I saw the third go down, so maybe I need to actually adjust that timing a little bit, but against Gateway first, it feels like I'm almost obligated to make at least 2 spines in the spore. I'm not sure. Okay, let's look at the time here. We've been kind of comparing the times. So, the first game we had, what was it, about 10 swarm hosts by like 14, 15 minutes. We opened Muta, so that's allowable. The biggest issue was that I never established critical mass beyond 16 or so. In the second game, it was like, 14 minutes, 15 minutes, 10 swarm hosts, and no mutas, so that was really bad. This game, we're at 11 minutes, 40 seconds, and sure, it's only 4 swarm hosts, but given that my opponent's on sentries, rock on. So now we're just waiting to see, do I establish critical mass? And just keep in mind, I'm not going for corruptors, I'm not going for, hey, let's mix in some hydrodots, I'm not doing anything cute here. I'm just make queens, make swarm hosts, get to vipers. Just what I was doing back in the day. So, we watch my production, and it's swarm hosts. I'm finally starting the 1-1. It's quite a bit later, because I found that that wasn't helping me. And I've already established tempo when his first Colossus comes out, which is exactly where it used to be. Fantastic. So, he's heavily committed to keeping this third alive. So, where does his mineral dump go? 8 cannons. I love it. And that's the kind of really weird and not really sound decisions that I used to be forcing my Protoss opponent into. But lately, I've been giving them all the initiative because I haven't been establishing critical mass, and I've been doing weird stuff with my, upgrade timings. And so I'm only at 13 swarm hosts now, but nevertheless, hopefully that's going to improve. Hit a drone cycle, I believe, in there. Let's see, where are we at? Only 61, so I'm running a really lone drone count as well. These roaches, I still think I need to improve. I did not need those roaches. Those should be swarm hosts. I really would like to get myself to a point where I do not make anything but queens and swarm hosts until 16 minimum. But we'll just kind of watch and see how that mass continues. But really the important thing is that the pressure started at an adequate time. I established tempo. So now we're up to 21. This is when things start to really go in my favor. And we don't have to watch this entire game to see the point, but this is just so different from the other 2 games we just watched. They were very back and forth. My aggression started so late that they already had this Colossus count, along with very healthy buffer, whereas in this case there's very little buffer. Just a few stalkers and a couple low energy sentries. And he's having to commit all sorts of resources to cannons. Just, to make sure that I don't just walk in and with one spawn snipe his Nexus. And all that was because I just went back to these basics and hit that timing that I knew was so important, but for some reason had forgotten. So there's kind of an overarching change that I want to make to how I grow as a player, because I'm extremely inconsistent, and I'm trying to find the reasons for that. That's part of where the changes to, working out regularly have come in and things like that. I'm trying to find some of the large, kind of overarching reasons why I'm inconsistent. But I still need to also look at the reasons in how I develop my gameplay that I'm inconsistent. And I think this knee-jerk style of changing my gameplay is one of them. Because, one bad loss that I'm frustrated with, and all of a sudden I completely overhaul an otherwise good idea. And I just scrap it, or I do something to it that makes it no longer effective. So our Protoss opponent's starting to move out, but as we know from this situation having occurred in probably 100 other games, this is never where he wants to be. There's too many locusts, and he's caught between a rock and a hard place here. And this looks a lot like the old ZVP that I was playing. Completely resets his Colossus count, forces him into a bad spot here with the spines. He's going to maybe do some damage, but it's not really worth it because he didn't kill any swarm hosts. This is all great. This is all what I want my ZVP to look like. So I'm going to use this and the other few games, ZVPs that I played since going back to this, as my template, and I'm going to use this for months, probably the entire season. Sure, I'll make little subtle changes, but they will be very small changes that I will test thoroughly before making an additional change. And that's the important thing. So maybe I will slightly adjust the timing of the third, or slightly adjust how many spines I get before my layer finishes, or something. But I will make one change, and I will play 20 to 30 ZVPs before I make another, because I need to confirm that the change I made is actually helping my gameplay. Alright, we're going to cruise this along, because this has been a pretty long cast. And actually, I do want to show the end of this, because his rage quit was hilarious. I think it was probably deliberately funny. This was on ladder, but as nerd rage goes, this was pretty good. Okay, so I do some cuteness with the Vipers, but he actually was moving into it. I wasn't expecting him to be moving into the Locust, so they didn't really get too much in. Okay, there we go. Please consider suicide. That was an awesome rage quit. And then he messaged me and told me I was a horrible human being. Those exact words. It was fantastic. Okay, so that's it. Keep me honest on this one. If you see me playing ZVP on the stream, or I record a YouTube video, and you're like, whoa, this is a completely different way to play ZVP and it's not working, just remind me that, I promised myself I was going to go back to the basics, even just grabbing some Evo chambers right near the contain, and had I not lost them all from his move forward, just going back and spamming abducts over and over. But yeah, just remind me that I'm just going back to what worked, and in the future I will be very gradually changing my play, because as much as I like being creative with the game, I also like winning. And I also like knowing that I'm playing in a stable environment, and I don't feel like I've been providing that environment for a very long time because I've been so busy trying to react to one loss or another. Okay, so that's it for this one. I really hope doesn't have to be split into two videos because of that little taskbar, but we'll see. Okay, thanks for watching.